Hello and welcome. You're watching Firstpost Vantage with me, Saroya. Let's get started. Another day and the same question haunts. Will the talks happen or not? The United States and Iran continue to be locked in a bitter battle of bravado, where diplomacy is perpetually under review. On the show tonight, I will tell you about a new entrant here, gunboat diplomacy, because when dialogue sinks, speedboats and warships appear to float up rather quickly. Also on the show tonight, after disruptions to global shipping and oil trade, is our data going to be the next target? I will tell you about the submarine cables, the invisible veins of the internet, now under very visible threat. And we will also talk about Trump's naughty or nice list. It may sound like a holiday gimmick, but this one comes with real-world consequences, with Washington playing Santa and the rest of the world hoping they do not end up with a lump of sanctions. And finally, India's soft power push has a new poster child, cheese. You heard that right. From cheddar diplomacy to bilateral ties, India is now trying to make the world say cheese one export at a time. All this and more lined up, but first, the headlines. Russian President Vladimir Putin yet to decide if he will attend the G20 summit, says the Kremlin. This follows reports that Putin has been formally invited to the summit. It will be held in the United States in December. Putin has not participated in the meeting of this group since 2019. At least 10 people killed, including a Turkish national, in an attack in Pakistan's Balochistan province. It took place at a copper and gold mining project. Around 40 militants on motorcycles stormed the site. This is the latest incident of violence in the restive region. In India, West Bengal votes amid sporadic incidents of violence. Today was the first phase of the high-stakes assembly election. Crude bombs were allegedly hurled in Murshidabad. Violence also erupted in Birbhum district over claims of electronic voting machines malfunctioning. Two commuter trains collide head-on near the Danish capital. At least 18 people have been injured in the accident. More than 30 were on the two trains. The cause of the collision is yet to be revealed. And Britain's Prince Harry lands in Kyiv on a surprise trip. This is his latest visit to the war-torn country. Last year, Harry had visited Ukraine to support wounded veterans as part of his Invictus Games Foundation. Now, Trump may have indefinitely shelved his plans to bomb Iran's bridges and power stations, but the conflict in West Asia is anything but paused. Far from it, actually. Now, the site of kinetic activity has shifted from land to the sea. The United States and Iran are locked in a contest to prove who can control the Strait of Hormuz. This is gunboat diplomacy. What's that, you ask? It's when a country threatens military force to further its foreign policy goals. And this gunboat diplomacy is now playing out in the world's most important energy choke point. Just a few hours ago, the US President ordered the United States Navy to shoot any boat putting mines in the Strait of Hormuz and vowed to step up efforts to clear the critical energy waterway amid a standoff with Iran. He said, and I'm quoting, "There is to be no hesitation." This came after the US Department of War released a dramatic video from the high seas. The video shows US forces boarding a tanker that it says was carrying Iranian oil. The video shows at least two choppers hovering over this massive tanker. US military personnel are then seen rappelling from the choppers onto the deck.
Vessel Majestic X, we intend to conduct the boarding of your vessel.
So the name of the ship is MT Majestic. It is stateless, meaning it is not registered with any state. The Pentagon says it was seized in the Indian Ocean under the United States Indo-Pacific Command's area of responsibility. In a statement released along with the video, the Department of War said that the US would continue global maritime enforcement to disrupt illicit networks and interdict vessels, providing material support to Iran wherever they operate. Today, the Iranian state television aired its own dramatic footage. It starts with footage of a speedboat with an Iranian flag approaching a ship at sea. The video then cuts to what appears to be a container vessel with the stern marked MSC. A second similar video shows armed soldiers boarding, this time a container ship. Both videos show soldiers moving on board with their rifles drawn. Both ships were seized by the IRGC using speedboats. And in both instances, the IRGC accuses the ships of operating without required permits and tampering with their navigation systems. Now, amid the tense standoff that has defined the ceasefire in West Asia, Iran has vowed it will not reopen the Strait of Hormuz. It says the blockade will continue as long as the United States maintains its own restrictions on Iranian ports. Iran, by firing on and seizing commercial vessels, is signaling that it can still disrupt global trade and hold the world economy. So while strikes across the region have largely subsided since the ceasefire began, pressure around Hormuz is not eased. Both Iran and the United States are now weaponizing economic leverage in a bid to force the other to back down. The casualty of this gunboat diplomacy? The entire world. The Strait of Hormuz handles about 1/5 of the world's daily oil and gas supply. The United States, through its blockade of Iranian ports, is pursuing a more immediate strategy. It is using sanctions and naval power under orders from Trump. The US Navy is blocking ships heading to and from Iranian ports. The aim is to ramp up pressure on the Iranian economy and force it to a breaking point. The United States believes that Tehran will run out of storage capacity for its oil and be forced to scale back its exports under the blockade. As a result, what we are seeing is a trial of strength playing out on the high seas, one in which both sides believe that time is on their side. The head of Iranian judiciary has said, and I'm quoting here, "The enemy is not in a position to set a timeline for us." And the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said, I'm quoting again, "Kharg Island storage will be full and the fragile Iranian oil wells will be shut. Constraining Iran's maritime trade directly targets the regime's primary revenue lifelines." Amid blockades by Iran and the United States, ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has fallen sharply. But even though traffic has dropped, security incidents are rising. Let's take a look at the numbers. Latest maritime data shows a steep decline after a peak of 26 raw material carriers on the 18th of April. Transit has fallen to their lowest levels since the war began, between April 19th and 22nd. Just 18 vessels crossed, and that's an average of 4.5 a day. Earlier, that number was around 9 daily. In peacetime, the Strait sees around 120 transits a day. That means traffic is down by over 95%. But fewer ships does not mean less risk. As I mentioned, incidents at sea are climbing. At least 7 attacks or incidents have been reported since Saturday. 5 of those have been confirmed by the International Maritime Organization. No incidents had been reported since the 7th of April until now. Allow me to put that in context for you. Experts say continued supply disruptions could wipe out up to 500,000 barrels a day. So as blockades and sanctions continue and talks remain stalled, the room for diplomacy is increasingly shrinking.
حرکت تروریستی
Each day over the past 2 weeks, we've been tracking the story for you. The story of the United States and Iran ceasefire. A story that is changed by the hour. One moment there is talk of diplomacy, the next talk of blockades and threats. And through all of it, we've been trying to answer one question. Is the region moving towards peace, or is it only buying time? Tonight, unfortunately, the answer is still unclear. The ceasefire continues. In fact, it has been extended now indefinitely. But the talks have still not started. There is no confirmed date, no confirmed participation. So if you're joining the story tonight, here is the simple truth you need to know. The airstrikes have halted, but the conflict has not been resolved. Let me tell you where things stand as of today. The rhetoric between Washington and Tehran is continuing. The United States says the door to negotiations remains open, but it is also keeping up the pressure. The White House says President Donald Trump has not set any deadline for Iran to respond. Take a look at this.
As you all saw yesterday, President Trump announced an extension of the ceasefire. He's maintaining and generously offering a bit of flexibility to a regime who has been completely tarnished because of Operation Epic Fury. There's obviously a lot of internal division. I know there's been some anonymous sourced reporting that there was maybe a 3 to 5 day deadline. That is not true. The president has not set a deadline himself. Ultimately, he will dictate the timetable.
Now, to give you some context, on Tuesday, Trump extended the 2-week ceasefire. But in his post on social media, he said he was giving Iran some time. For what? To come up with a unified proposal. And why is that? Because he thinks Iran's leadership is fractured after the strikes. Look at what he posted a while back, and I'm quoting here. Iran is having a very hard time figuring out who their leader is. They just don't know. The infighting is between the hardliners who've been losing badly on the battlefield and the moderates who are not very moderate at all, but gaining respect. It's crazy. So in simple terms, Washington wants to believe the strikes have given it an advantage. That is why it has extended the ceasefire to test whether Iran is ready to offer new terms. But at the same time, the United States has kept its naval blockade of Iran and economic sanctions in place.
As we await that response, there's a ceasefire with the military and kinetic strikes, but Operation Economic Fury continues, and the effective and successful naval blockade continues as well of ships and vessels that are moving to and from Iranian ports. We are completely strangling their economy through this blockade. They're losing $500 million a day. The Karg Island is completely full. They can't move oil in and out. They can't even.
Iran, of course, is not buying all of this. Its president says Tehran will welcome dialogue. His name is Masoud Pezeshkian. But he says there are 3 things that stand as the real barriers to genuine talks. US naval blockade of Iranian ports, repeated threats and breach of commitments. In fact, Iran's parliament speaker has also spoken out. His name is Mohammad Ghalibaf. He says the ceasefire has little value if Iran is still under a blockade. He also says reopening the Strait of Hormuz is not possible, at least not under the current conditions. So the deadlock continues. Washington wants an Iranian offer first. Tehran wants relief first. Both sides say they want talks, but both are still setting conditions and trying to project their own victory. This has left uncertainty over the way forward. What's more, there's another voice trying to make a mark in this debate. I'm talking about Reza Pahlavi. He is the exiled crown prince and the son of the last Shah of Iran. Now, he has criticized the US-Iran ceasefire. Pahlavi says he does not believe the current Iranian regime will change.
The whole narrative of ceasefire negotiation is still based on thinking that somehow the behavior is not going to change and you're going to deal with people who all of a sudden have become pragmatists. I don't see that happening. I'm not saying that diplomacy should not be given a chance, but I think diplomacy has been given enough chance, and every time it has had setbacks.
Meanwhile, the country trying to host these talks is also under pressure. Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, remains under heavy security. Roads have been sealed, checkpoints have been set up, hotels are under guard, and parts of the city have been disrupted. All of this for talks that still have no confirmed start date. Residents have been complaining of lost business, long delays, rising costs, and daily disruptions.
अमेरिका इसराइल ईरान का है ना, अब पाकिस्तान ने सारा रास्ते इधर बंद किया है, सारा आवाम जलील के बदुआ देता है, जो ये देखो ना, ये सारा आड़े बंद किया है ना, सारा आवाम बेरोजगार पड़ा है, महंगाई गुर्बत है.
Well, this is a familiar Pakistan story. Big diplomatic ambitions but weak local management. Now, the diplomatic activity does not end there. On the Lebanon-Israel front, another round of peace talks is expected in Washington today. But there are sticking points here as well. Beirut wants the current 10-day ceasefire extended. It came into effect on the 17th of April. Lebanon also wants an end to strikes, an Israeli withdrawal from certain areas, and reconstruction to begin. Israel, on the other side, wants Hezbollah dismantled and long-term security guarantees. So what you're seeing right now is more than one negotiation track opening at once. One with Iran, another with Lebanon. But none of them yet offer a final settlement. There is one more part of the story that we need to address, and that is the rise of misinformation and fake news. Over the past few days, several false claims have been circulating online. Tonight, we are going to debunk two of the most prominent ones. Both relate to India. Let's start with the first one. Now, there are claims that India has paid Iran cash or cryptocurrency. This is to move Indian ships safely through the Strait of Hormuz. These claims are wrong. New Delhi says no such payment has been made. In fact, the government says at least 10 Indian ships have exited Hormuz in the last few days, and 14 ships are still in the Persian Gulf. Now, fake news number two. There are reports that claim petrol and diesel prices would soon rise in India. By how much? By at least 25 to 28 rupees a litre. Again, these reports are wrong. The government has issued a clarification saying no such proposal is under consideration. So as this crisis continues, here is what matters the most tonight. The diplomacy is real, the tensions are real, the economic risks very real, and so is the wave of misinformation around it. So what is it that you can do? Keep following the facts, pause before sharing claims, verify details from trusted sources, and do not believe everything you hear or read. The Iranian media has just put out a chilling warning. And this time, it is not about oil. It is not about tankers. It is about the invisible cables that keep the world running. The cables that carry your emails, your bank transactions, your video calls, and 95% of global internet traffic. I'm talking about undersea cables or submarine cables. The warning came from Tasnim News Agency, an Iranian state-linked outlet. The message was pointed. It says, I'm quoting, simultaneous damage to several major cables could trigger severe outages across the Persian Gulf. The report mapped key undersea cables running through the Strait of Hormuz. It made mentions of several Gulf countries, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, who rely heavily on these maritime cables. The report framed these landing stations as potential pressure points. Now let me explain why this deserves your attention. When you send a message to someone, when you transfer money or stream a video on your phone, where does that data go? It flows underwater through the submarine cables. They are laid under the sea, on the ocean floor. They use fiber optic light signals to carry global data traffic, which is basically transforming information into light and then sending it through cables. These cables work faster than satellites. They connect continents worldwide. And now, someone is talking about cutting them. Let's talk about why this matters beyond West Asia. The Strait of Hormuz, you know it as the world's most critical oil choke point. But it is something else too. It's a digital choke point. It has a dense web of fiber optic cables beneath its waters. They carry an estimated 17 to 30% of regional internet traffic. They power the AI infrastructure hubs of the UAE and Saudi Arabia, the ones backed by tech giants Amazon, Microsoft and Google. If these cables snap, and I mean if even some of them snap, the damage won't stay in the Gulf. Targeting them may result in a wider conflict, dragging in more countries like the EU, the Gulf states. Stock markets could freeze, banking systems could falter, payment networks could fail. Within minutes, your entire digital life could be disrupted. And this is not theoretical. We've seen this before. Undersea cables have been targeted time and again. Back in 2024, NATO reported cable cuts between Finland and Germany and Sweden and Lithuania.
Maritime Group 1 is in the area at the moment to support the new NATO Operation Baltic Sentry. As you know, not too long ago we had a bit of an issue in these waters with critical undersea infrastructure. It is perceived there is a threat to that critical underwater infrastructure, and we're here to help.
In 2024 and 2025, undersea cables in the Red Sea were damaged amid regional tensions. Internet speeds dropped, services went down, repairs took months because ships couldn't safely access the area. Yemen's Houthi rebels have threatened this infrastructure before. And just recently, the UK Defence Secretary revealed that 3 Russian submarines conducted a covert operation around cables and pipelines north of the UK. A British warship and aircraft were deployed.
In response to the Russian submarines, I can confirm that I deployed our armed forces to track and to deter any malign activity by these vessels. A Royal Navy warship and Royal Air Force P-8 aircraft, alongside allies, ensured that the Russian submarines were monitored 24/7. The Akula submarine subsequently retreated home, having been closely tracked throughout, and we continue to monitor the 2 Gugi submarines in and around wider UK waters.
Back then, Moscow was sending a signal. The same kind of signal Iran appears to be sending now. The playbook is the same: target what you can't see, cut what you can't defend. And here's the part that hits close to home: India. We are one of the world's largest consumers of data, with over 800 million internet users, falling just behind China. Our IT sector, digital payments and AI-powered economy depend enormously on these very cables. Landing stations in Oman, the UAE and Pakistan are also on the same fragile network. A disruption means slower internet for millions, unreliable cloud services, broken payment systems, and a direct blow to India's booming digital economy. So here's the uncomfortable truth: undersea cables are nearly impossible to monitor. They are incredibly hard to protect. And in a region where tensions are already at a boiling point, even accidental damage could trigger consequences. The sea has always been a stage for power, but it seems the next war won't just be fought with warships, because this seems to be the new front line, where wars are quiet, but the consequences are loud, where a single disruption can echo across continents. And in a world that runs on instant connection, even a few seconds of silence can feel like chaos. Amid the war with Iran, the United States is facing a big military shakeup. Its Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is warring with his own generals. The sudden exit of U.S. Navy Secretary John Phelan is the latest in a series of top military officials who've been forced out of their posts. The Pentagon announced this departure abruptly without any explanation, making him the first service chief to leave during President Donald Trump's second term. The Trump administration calls it routine restructuring, but critics say it exposes a rift between the political leadership and the military top brass. So what exactly is going on? Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump may be fighting multiple battles abroad, but at home, he's facing a different kind of conflict. One that is unfolding inside his own Pentagon. War Secretary Pete Hegseth is now at odds with sections of the US military leadership, and the signs of that rift are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The latest flashpoint is the sudden exit of US Navy Secretary John Phelan. The Pentagon has confirmed that Phelan is leaving office with immediate effect, but has offered no explanation for the abrupt decision. He is being replaced for now by Undersecretary Hung Cao in an acting capacity. Cao is a 25-year Navy veteran who served in combat zones. His biography includes fleeing Vietnam with his family as a child in the 1970s. But Phelan's departure comes at a time when the United States is locked in a war with Iran that still remains unresolved. Since returning to office early last year, US President Donald Trump has overseen a purge of top military personnel. Earlier this month, General Randy George, the former US Army Chief of Staff, was asked to step down as part of a broader restructuring of military leadership. While no official reason was publicly detailed, the move was seen as part of efforts to recalibrate command during the conflict. Since then, the Chairman of Joint Chief of Staff, General Charles C.Q. Brown, the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, Air Force Vice Chief of Staff, General James Life, have been removed. More than a dozen senior military officials have either been removed, reassigned, or have stepped down over the past year. In several cases, these departures have come without clear explanations, while others have been framed as part of a broader restructuring effort. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has defended these moves, maintaining that the President is simply choosing the leadership team he believes is best suited for the challenges ahead. However, critics, particularly Democratic lawmakers, have raised concerns that these changes could signal a deeper politicization of the US military. An institution that has traditionally operated independently of partisan politics. At the same time, the Pentagon has also proposed a significant reduction in the number of top-ranking officers. The Pentagon is planning to cut 20% of its 4-star generals and admirals, and reduce the total number of flag officers by 10%. Officials in the Trump administration say this is aimed at streamlining command structures, but critics argue it could further concentrate control at the very top. Remember, all of this is unfolding at a particularly sensitive moment. The United States is still engaged in a prolonged standoff with Iran, with tensions continuing to play out both on land and at sea. And there are growing concerns about the wider economic impact of that conflict. According to the Pentagon, clearing mines in the Strait of Hormuz could take as long as 6 months, raising the possibility of sustained disruptions to global oil supplies and continued pressure on energy prices. And back home, the political impact is already becoming visible. Multiple opinion polls now show President Trump's approval ratings hovering in the mid-30s, close to their lowest levels. Voters are expressing concern across a range of issues, from the economy to the ongoing Iran conflict, as well as broader questions around the national security and jobs. All these developments point to a presidency under pressure on multiple fronts, facing external challenges abroad while managing internal tensions within the country's own military establishment.
Let's talk about Donald Trump's naughty or nice list. I know it sounds oddly festive and theatrical, except it may actually be foreign policy. And the implications may belong squarely in global geopolitics. So what exactly is this list? At its core, it's a proposed system to classify allies, especially those in NATO, based on one simple question: are you with the United States or not? Countries that align closely with Trump's strategic priorities would be, obviously, on the nice list, while those who hesitate, question or refuse participation could find themselves on the naughty list. Yes, global alliances reduced to a report card. Now, to be clear, countries have always been evaluated. Diplomacy is not charity. It is negotiation, it is leverage and interest. But what makes this proposal different is the tone and the structure. This is not a quiet assessment behind closed doors. This is a visible sorting mechanism, a hierarchy. And this comes amid the war with Iran, which is currently seeing a fragile pause. I will explain that part in a bit. But let's rewind. Donald Trump has long been one of NATO's most vocal critics. During his presidency, he has repeatedly accused member states of not spending enough on defense. He argued that the United States was carrying the alliance on its back. And that skepticism never really went away. If anything, it has now evolved. Now it appears to be taking the form of a structured approach. And the timing is important. As I mentioned earlier, the war in Iran, this was the most recent trigger for Donald Trump. This war has raised several questions about its justification, its legality, and its long-term consequences. But perhaps the most telling reaction has come not from adversaries, but from allies. Because many of America's traditional partners have chosen not to fully participate. They have, in effect, drawn a line. They say, this is not our war. Several NATO countries have resisted calls to support US military action against Iran. This is where the friction intensified. And President Trump has not taken this lightly. He has openly criticized NATO, describing the military alliance as a paper tiger, saying, well, we don't need them anyway.
And I'll say it publicly, we're very disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing. And I've always said, 25 years ago, I mean, I was somebody that wasn't a politician, but I was always involved in politics and I understood politics. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours.
We didn't need them. We blasted the hell out of them, out of Iran. And the last thing I needed was NATO stepping in our way, because they're a paper tiger. But so we didn't need them, but I asked anyway.
Well, if you don't need them, then why are you mad, sir? The message is clear. Support the United States or risk being sidelined.
I think a tremendous mistake was when NATO just wasn't there. They just weren't there. It's going to make a lot of money for the United States because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on NATO. Hundreds of protecting them. And we would have always been there for them. But now, based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?
So this brings us to the so-called naughty or nice list. While the exact names are not out yet, there are some clues. Back in December, Trump's Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, said this, and I'm quoting here, model allies that step up, like Israel, South Korea, Poland, increasingly Germany, the Baltics and others, will receive our special favors. Allies that still fail to do their part for collective defense will face consequences. So that is the thinking inside the White House. Now, NATO knows Trump is disappointed. In fact, Mark Rutte acknowledged this. He said, and I'm quoting again, he's clearly disappointed with many NATO allies, and I can see his point. But there is also a procedural concern here. You see, the United States did not fully consult NATO before its operations in Iran. And now those same allies are being judged for not participating in a war they did not collectively decide to fight. So trust is eroding. NATO was built on the idea of collective defense. An attack on one is an attack on all. It is a principle designed to remove ambiguity. A ranking system reintroduces that ambiguity. There is also the issue of predictability. Alliances rely on stability. Then there is what appears to be a shifting worldview, one where the countries are refusing to blindly jump into wars the United States starts. And while this pattern of punishment for defiance isn't new for the current US administration, it is increasingly spilling into international relations. Because this is not just about one policy idea. It is about how the United States, under Trump, chooses to engage with the world. For now, the naughty or nice list remains a reported concept. There is no formal policy, but the conversation itself is telling. Do what we ask you to do, or brace yourself for Mr. President's wrath.
The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves. And hopefully it's going to say, because our country is being scammed. We're getting all of these people.
So Donald Trump has done it again. He's invited fresh trouble. This time it's over a reposted video. Let me break down what happened here. On his social media platform, Truth Social, Donald Trump reposted a video. The video features a radio host named Michael Savage, host of The Savage Nation on Newsmax. And in this video, the host goes on a rant about birthright citizenship, about how babies born in America automatically become citizens, and about how that policy, in his words, is being abused. And then he says, he calls India and China, and I'm quoting here, hellholes on the planet. Trump did not just watch this video, he reshared it. And he also posted the transcript. Now think about it. The President of the United States amplified a video calling India a hellhole. India, a country of 1.4 billion people, a country that is, by every major economic measure, the fastest growing major economy in the world. Our Ministry of External Affairs said it has taken note, but it declined to elaborate. Now, what is birthright citizenship debate exactly? Let's understand this. Trump has long wanted to end what is called jus soli, the legal principle that if you're born on American soil, you are American. It's enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution. Trump's interpretation? Birthright citizenship was meant only for babies of slaves, not for everyone else.
People are making a big living, getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars from bringing people in and saying, congratulations, your whole family is going to be a citizen of the United States of America. That's not what it was for. It wasn't for billionaires bringing people in or family in. It was for the children of slaves. And what you really have to do, and I don't think the lawyers talk about it as much, look at when the Civil War ended and look at the date of when this was enacted.
The US Supreme Court largely leans against Trump's attempts. Legal consensus also disagrees. About 36 countries around the world, including Canada, Mexico, and most of South America, also offer birthright citizenship. So when Trump told CNBC a couple of days ago that no country in the world offers it other than the United States, that was simply false. But facts, it seems, are not the point here. The point is politics. The point is a narrative. And the narrative is immigrants are the problem. Which brings us back to India. Here's where it gets interesting. Because the policies being pushed, the ones that call immigrants a burden, a drain, a threat, they crash headfirst into reality. And reality, as always, wins. Let's talk numbers here. There are approximately 5.2 million Indian Americans in the United States. That's about 1.5% of the population. A small number, easy to overlook perhaps, until you look at what they do. Roughly 75 to 77% of Indian Americans hold professional or skilled jobs. Take another example, America's Silicon Valley, the global hub of tech and innovation. It is dominated by Indian origin people. Alphabet, run by Sundar Pichai. Microsoft, run by Satya Nadella. Adobe, run by Shantanu Narayan, who recently announced his decision to step down. YouTube, Neil Mohan. Nearly 1/3 of the Silicon Valley tech force is made up of Indians. Together, they run various Fortune 500 companies. These aren't minor companies. These are the companies that power the American economy. So I want to ask a question here. Are these the people from the hellhole? These are the CEOs of some of the most powerful tech companies on earth. Is that what a hellhole produces? And it doesn't stop with corner offices. Indian Americans have the highest median household income of any major ethnic group in the United States, around $150,000 a year. And the overall American median, that's roughly $75,000 to $80,000 a year. So Indian Americans earn nearly twice the national average. Higher income means higher taxes, federal taxes, state taxes, payroll taxes that fund Social Security and Medicare, the very systems that every American depends on. So while the policy says immigrants are a burden, the data says Indian Americans are among the biggest contributors to America's economy. Speaking of economy, remember when Trump called our economy dead? When he labeled us the tariff king? When he said we are a very big abuser? Shortly after, our quarterly growth figures came in. Nearly 8% growth. The IMF and World Bank both declared India the fastest growing major economy in the world. Here's the irony at the heart of all of this. The policy is designed to push people away. The rhetoric, the reposting, the rants, they target the very communities that are holding up the American dream from the inside. You can call it a hellhole, but the hellhole is running your tech companies, paying your taxes, building your future, and that no executive order can change. Our next story is about China. It has unveiled a new military drone system. It is called Atlas, and it is built to launch dozens of drones within minutes. But the signal is hard to miss. Future battles may not begin with tanks or warplanes. They may begin with swarms of cheap, fast and coordinated drones. For India, this is a development to watch closely. It comes as the relations thaw between the two countries. So what message is China sending with this new system? Our next report explains.
A future border alarm may not begin with tanks moving or jets roaring overhead. It may begin with a quiet truck taking position, and moments later, dozens of drones rising into the sky. That is the warning behind China's new Atlas drone swarm system. Unveiled by the People's Liberation Army in late March, Atlas is a mobile battlefield platform built for swarm warfare. Mounted on vehicles, it can reportedly launch and coordinate up to 96 drones from one command node. Chinese media calls it a mini battlefield network on wheels. Speed is central to the design. Launch intervals are set to be under 3 seconds. That means a full wave could be airborne within minutes. Once launched, the swarm can scout terrain, relay signals, jam communications, confuse radar, and strike targets in coordination. Some drones may gather images, some may disrupt sensors, others may attack. The real danger is not one drone. It is numbers, timing, and coordination. Even a few breaking through could damage air defenses, supply roads, or command center. That is why systems like Atlas matter. They are built to stretch traditional defenses. Cheap drones can force defenders to use costly interceptors. The unveiling also reflects a wider shift in China's military strategy. Beijing has invested heavily in drones, artificial intelligence, and battlefield networking. Its defense budget has risen steadily with broader modernization plans. China increasingly describes future wars as automated and intelligent. That means faster decisions and more machines in the first wave. For India, the concern is clear. Any such launcher positioned in Tibet or Xinjiang would sit closer to the line of actual control. From there, swarms could target roads, bridges, radar sites, logistic hubs, or forward posts. Mobility makes launchers harder to track. Camouflage makes them harder to spot. Numbers make them harder to stop. A strike on mountain supply routes could slow reinforcements. Pressure on communications could create confusion at key moments. Even without major missiles, such systems can shape a battlefield. That is why drone defense is now as important as air defense. Yet this military signal comes during a significant time. Relations between India and China are thawing. They worsened sharply after the Galwan Valley clash in 2020. Trust collapsed, travel links weakened, and political ties froze. Now signs of a limited restoration of ties is emerging. India is reportedly preparing to resume regular tourist visas for Chinese nationals, more than 5 years after Galwan. That would reopen a channel frozen for years. Air China has also reportedly restarted direct Beijing to New Delhi flights after a 6-year pause. That could help business travel and official contact. More flights can mean more communication. More communication can reduce misunderstanding. But warmer gestures do not erase strategic reality. Flights can resume while troops remain deployed. Visas can return while vigilance stays high. Trade can recover while rivalry continues. That is the complexity of modern geopolitics. Diplomatic ties and military competition now move together. So Atlas is more than a weapons story today. It reflects the two tracks shaping the region. Dialogue in public, deterrence in the background. And for India, the task is clear. Engage carefully, build capability, stay alert, and remain prepared.
Imagine this, you ask a machine to do one small task, write an email, fix your grammar, plan your day, or maybe answer a question. And in seconds, it does all of it. Convenient, right? But here's the bigger question tonight. If AI is carrying the mental load, what is happening to the human mind? You see, artificial intelligence is no longer a novelty. It is becoming a daily habit. Students use it for homework, employees use it for reports, families use it to plan holidays, and companies use it to save time and increasingly, in many cases, money. Around 900 million people now use ChatGPT every week. When something becomes that common, its consequences deserve a closer look. So tonight, we ask a simple question. Is AI making us less sharp? Well, let me just say it. Is it making us stupid? Researchers say it may be weakening human skills in 5 ways. And let me walk you through these. Impact number 1, AI is making us complacent. AI often speaks in a calm, confident tone, even when it is wrong. And that confidence can be misleading. Take this example. Last year, many AI chatbots like ChatGPT called Donald Trump the former US president when he's the current one. That is not a political error. It is what happens when you stop fact-checking. Impact number 2, AI can outsource memory. A yet-to-be-published study from MIT Media Lab tested 54 adults between 18 and 39. They were split into 3 groups. One used ChatGPT, one used Google search, one used no digital help. All 3 groups wrote essays. Researchers tracked their brain activity. The AI group showed the lowest engagement. Some measures were up to 55% lower than people who relied only on their own thinking. And afterwards, many AI users struggled to recall parts of the essays they had just written. So the assignment was done, but thinking was not. And this has a name: cognitive offloading. It means shifting mental effort onto tools. And it has happened before. Maps changed how we navigate. Phones replaced memorizing numbers. Search engines reduced the need to remember facts. Artificial intelligence may now be doing that to our ability to think. That brings me to impact number 3. AI is eroding judgment. A study from Microsoft and Carnegie, it shows that 300 people were surveyed, 300 knowledge workers. Those who relied more heavily on AI said that they did less critical thinking during tasks. That does not mean that intelligence vanishes. It means unused skills fade. Just like the body, the mind weakens when it is not used. Impact number 4. AI can flatten originality. In the MIT essay study that we just spoke about, teachers said many AI-assisted essays felt generic. Some lacked depth, others felt soulless. So the grammar may be perfect, the structure may be clean, but the human voice has disappeared. And that voice is often what people remember. Finally, impact number 5, AI surrender. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania use a term for it. They call it cognitive surrender. That is when people accept AI answers too quickly, with very little scrutiny. They begin to trust the machine more than their own instincts. And here's a real-world example of where that leads. A multinational medical study found that professionals using an AI tool to screen for colon cancer later performed worse at spotting tumors without it. So the system helped in the moment, but it took something away in the process. Still, there is an important caveat to this. Most of these findings are short-term. The long-term impact is still unclear. Researchers do not yet know whether people adapt safely or whether these habits become harmful over time. So this raises the question, is artificial intelligence the enemy? Frankly, no. AI is clearly a part of our present. Hospitals use it to read scans. Businesses use it to cut repetitive work. Students use it for tutoring. The real answer, as always, is balance. Use AI to generate ideas, then apply your own judgment. Use it to explain concepts, then teach them back to yourself. Use it for a first draft, then rewrite in your own voice. Let it save time and use that time to think. Because the greatest threat is not a clever machine, it's a human who has outsourced thinking. And now our final story. Not too long ago, cheese in India was predictable. It showed up when needed, stayed in the background, and rarely tried to steal the spotlight. But cut to 2026, and that quiet supporting act has turned into a full-blown headliner. We're now talking artisanal creations, international awards, and cheese varieties that sound like they are the product of some faraway land but are proudly crafted in India. And now the world is taking notice. Because this isn't just about cheese, it's about India stepping onto a global stage and owning it, one bold, flavorful packed bite at a time.
When you think of a cheese platter, the kind that looks like it belongs in a French vineyard with a glass of wine, you probably wouldn't think of India. But maybe it's time we did. Because in a development no one had on their bingo card, India has officially entered the global cheese conversation. Not as a polite guest nibbling crackers in the corner, but more like the one who waltzed in, took the mic, and left with the trophies. At the Mundial do Queijo do Brasil 2026, one of the world's biggest cheese competitions, Indian artisanal cheeses didn't just show up, they showed off. Let us call it India's lactose-powered domination, because the nation went home with 4 medals. Think of it as the Oscars, Grammys, and Cannes of cheese rolled into one glorious wheel. Leading the creamy coup was French-inspired Eleftheria Gulmarg, a brie-style cheese that won Super Gold. Then came the Yak Chulpi Soft, from Ladakh's Nordic farm, made from yak milk, taking the gold and proving that apparently even the Himalayas are now in their gourmet era. Another gold went to Eleftheria Brunost, inspired by Norway's traditional brown cheese, while Eleftheria Kalimiri, the Indian reinterpretation of Swiss-style aged cheese, picked up silver, because obviously even our cheese has range. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi calling it an impressive debut, congratulated the makers Mausam Narang and Thanle Nurbu for achieving this feat.
Cheese from India makes its mark globally. India made an impressive debut at the Mundial do Queijo do Brasil 2026, which is a vibrant international competition for cheese and dairy products. Such successes strengthen India's artisanal dairy sector on the world stage.
But what makes this win even more interesting is what's actually behind these cheeses. Because this isn't just copy-paste Europe, it's a fusion. European techniques meeting Indian terroir, Himalayan milk, local climates, even a hint of Indian spice and innovation. Two names in particular are leading this quiet dairy revolution: Eleftheria cheese out of Mumbai and Nordic Farm from Ladakh. And together, they are proving that India isn't just importing taste anymore, it's exporting craft. But here's where things get interesting. Because the real story isn't just about awards, it's about what's changing back home. For years, India's relationship with cheese was modest. Cottage cheese or paneer was the undisputed star. And cheese mostly meant processed slices, cubes, and the occasional pizza topping. It was there, but it wasn't the moment. Cut to now, and suddenly, cheese is everywhere. India isn't just eating cheese anymore, it's exploring it. From creamy burrata and feta salads at cafes to loaded fries, cheesy dim sums, and gourmet sandwiches, cheese has moved from the sidelines to center stage. Gen Z also has a role to play in India's cheese revolution. This is the generation that turned cheese into a full-blown obsession. For them, cheese goes beyond comfort food. It's a mix of culture, content, and pure indulgence. It's the dramatic mozzarella pull on Instagram, the extra cheese option selected with zero financial restraint, the 1 a.m. nachos, the Korean ramen with a processed cheese slice melting into chaos, the burrata at brunch getting more attention than the actual people at the table. This is the generation that took cheese from add-on to main character energy. They are experimenting more, ordering more, and more importantly, demanding better. And that demand is changing the market. India's cheese market, valued at over $1 billion in 2023, is expected to skyrocket to over $6 billion in 2032. Globally, cheese consumption is heading towards 27 million metric tons by 2027. In simple terms, the world is eating more cheese, and India wants a bigger slice of that pizza. And here's the full circle movement. India isn't new to cheese at all. Cheese making here dates back to thousands of years. Traditional varieties like Kalari in Kashmir or Bandos became trendy. So what's happening now isn't some random food trend. It's a comeback, a glow-up, a dairy rebrand. India is rediscovering its cheese roots, giving them a modern twist and sending them back into the world looking expensive, interesting, and just a little smug. But the story didn't begin on a luxury cheese board. It began in a country once short on milk. Before the White Revolution in 1970 transformed India into one of the world's largest dairy producers. From scarcity to surplus, it's been a long journey and a moment of pride. So yes, next time you picture a cheese board, France might just show up first, but India, it is no longer waiting to be invited to the table. It's already on the board.
While high-stakes diplomacy continues to move at its own unhurried pace, the internet, as always, has decided it simply cannot wait. And the latest star of this very online show is US Vice President J.D. Vance, currently stuck in what can only be described as diplomatic limbo. His much-talked about trip to Pakistan? Delayed, uncertain, and perfect meme material. Social media has wasted no time, as always, turning the situation into a full-blown comedy special, with jokes about never-ending itineraries, loading screens for diplomacy, and Vance apparently waiting for a trip that refuses to take off. Because in 2026, when diplomacy hits pause, the internet hits play. And now it is time for Vantage Shots, images that tell a story. An AI-powered robot built by Sony beat elite table tennis players in Japan. Wildfire breaks out in northern Japan, prompting evacuations. And an adorable baby Asian elephant made its debut at Washington's National Zoo. Also taking you back in history, on this day in 2005, the very first video was uploaded on YouTube. It featured co-founder Javed Karim at the San Diego Zoo, titled Me at the Zoo. The clip has since raked up over 300 million views. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. The world moves fast. Power shifts, unexpected developments, changing alliances. Every day brings a new headline. But headlines are only the beginning. Because behind every story, there is context. There are consequences and there are questions worth asking. Find the answers, understand the story, take on the world. This is Saroya for Firstpost Vantage.